me going if my Shura is ever gone from my life. Ned plopped down on the bed next to Brandon, Ned's eyes lost somewhere in the distance on the wall not 3 meters away from the two brothers. What are you talking about, Ned? The two of you are getting wed, you will rule Winterfell together and grow old together. Don't patronize me. I'm not, Ned said, and Brandon turned to find his brother looking vulnerable in a way Brandon had not seen Ned before. Shura is pregnant. I am terrified, Bran. What if she dies in childbirth? Brandon did not know what to say to that. Shura was pregnant. Wait. I'll be an uncle. Brandon only noticed how incredulous he must have sounded by the way Ned started laughing. It did not seem like Ned could stop, and after a second Brandon started snorting, before the both of them laughed until their sides hurt. You'll be a great father, Ned. Brandon could not say more. Women died in their own battles. Their own mother Lyra had birthed Brandon and all his siblings healthily, only to die to a wasting sickness when Benjen was just 4 years old. Still Brandon knew enough of enough women that died in the birthing bed. His friend Willem Dustin never knew his mother, for example. Ned gave Brandon one of his kind smiles, the ones that warmed you like a hearth. Brandon had not received that smile for a long time. There was hope for their relationship to mend. Where do we stand, Ned? Without any specification Ned knew what Brandon was asking for. I cannot, Ned said softly, and it is not my forgiveness to give, Bran. But I feel for you. Convince Shura of your sincerity, and you will be welcome in Winterfell when it is my time to rule. But do not worry, big brother. I have already been talking with father about your future. You will never have to fear the winter, you are part of the pack. There was an earnestness to Ned's words that almost had Brandon shedding tears. Brandon did not look at his brother, for he knew his eyes were swimming. How do I go about earning Shura's forgiveness, Ned? Brandon asked quietly. You will have to ask Shura yourself, Bran. It is her you hurt the most. Ned's answer did not inspire confidence in Brandon. His little brother apparently saw Brandon's despondency, for Brandon thought he could hear his brother grinning. And I do not think yours to be a hopeless case, Brandon. After all, Shura was the one that sent me to check on you today. Brandon must have looked ridiculous as he snapped around to look at Ned. The loud grin that Ned had worn turned into a deep belly chuckle that made the bed move a little. It's true, Bran. Last night Shura and I found you tumbled off the bed when we turned in. You were mumbling and crying in your sleep, though we could not discern what came out of your lips. Aside from a steady stream of vomit, that is. I had to turn you on your side, just so you wouldn't suffocate. Bran. You are lucky father was tipsy enough to forget to lock your door behind him when he brought you to bed. After I had propped you up, I had a guard posted by your door so you would not choke on your own bile. Yet Shura saw how anxious I was about you, so she sent me to check on you myself this morning. Ned's face seemed warped by fondness then, and his eyes turned almost liquid silver. I cannot bring myself to request anything of Shura if it concerns you. Yet even as Shura hates you, she knows I love you, Bran. So, she sent me out on her own. At that, Brandon's brother got up from the bed and left the room. Brandon remained for a long time, even though his hangover had cleared up during the talk already. Just 3 days past Shura's betrothal had been announced, and already they were breaking camp to venture north. To Winterfell. It still felt unreal at times, becoming the Lady of Winterfell. Becoming the Queen of Winter. She, a Dornish woman. Shura had not imagined that kind of life for her, bound by duty to one place. But Ned would be with her, that part of had not changed. Shura still remembered lying under the stars at the God's Eye with Ned, dreaming of wonders far away. V's Dothrak. The bells of Norphos and the mazes of Lorath. The God King's palace of Ib and the shadow city of Nefer. Shura would never see those places now. Well, maybe Lorath and Norphos, but a journey to Iben or Engai would take Shura and Ned too far from their domain. Not that Shura wanted to go traveling right now. For a few days already she had spent every morning in the privy, with Ned holding her hair as Shura vomited. Shura might have disliked the taste of ale before, but now she downright loathed even the smell of it. And Shura had never thought she could miss lemon cakes as much as she did now. The idea to spend almost 4 weeks in a carriage was revolting. Just the thought of movement was nauseating, if Ashura was honest. At least Ashura had managed to convince her new betrothed and her new father that she was fit to ride as far as the twins. 7. Sake, Dothraki women rode their horses until they went into labor. Also, taking a wheelhouse from Riverrun would have necessitated following first the River Road and then the King's Road. That would not do, they had business to attend to at the twins after all. But, best of all, their party would finally split from him. Ashura could not wait for Brandon Stark to finally leave for the south, for Starfall. Oh, how wroth Ashura had been when Ned had finally cracked yesterday. Her beloved had been a little lost in thought the morning after the feast, just after Ned had returned from his visit to Brandon. The 2 days since it had always seemed as if Ned kept an eye on their door, at all times. Waiting. Expecting. Ned had confessed yesterday, waiting for Brandon. Waiting for Brandon to beg Ashura's forgiveness. Never before had Ashura felt as angry with Ned. She had shouted and raged and scratched at Ned. How dare Ned accept this? At first, Ashura had thought that Brandon already had Ned's forgiveness. Ned had taken her slack without comment. Only when Ashura had voiced her fear, that all was good again between Ned and Brandon, did Ned look shocked. And then Ned had fallen to his knees, clutching to Ashura's legs. He had sworn her, Ned had sworn he had not forgiven Brandon. That Ned would stand behind Ashura in this, against Brandon, always. And Ned had talked like he did so well. Of hope. Of family. Of healing. Ashura had flinched at that, but Ned knew her. It was not gone. It never was. Because even though Ashura had thought nothing of that day anymore, Ned had told Ashura that she still cried in her sleep at times. Cried, just as she did while screaming at Ned yesterday. Cried, while Ned held her tight until she fell asleep. Ashura had woken in Ned's embrace earlier, and for all she knew Ned was still asleep. Ned had talked truths, yesterday. Not sense, but truths. Brandon would be in their lives a long time, and it would be difficult for Ashura to ignore Brandon forever. To ever move past her trauma, if Ashura ignored Brandon forever. And Ned was truthful when he said he believed Brandon when Brandon had told Ned that Brandon was sorry. Sorry. As if that was it, as if Ashura had been waiting for Brandon Stark to feel sorry for assaulting her, for trying to rape her. It only had made Ashura hate Brandon Stark again, and that after she had managed to stop remembering Brandon for so long. Oh, Ashura was incensed, and there was only one person she was willing to take it out on. Ashura had approached Ricard right after dawn, and after a fruitful talk Ricard had agreed to lend Ashura his most trusted guards. And now there Ashura stood, outside Brandon Stark's door. Her hand trembled, and Ashura hated it. She did not knock, she decided against it. No, Ashura barged right in, Roland and Garth in her wake. The two guards took their position by the door. As Brandon's eyes fell on Ashura he looked pale like he had seen a ghost instead. You fucking coward! Growled Ashura silently, and she was happy to detect steel in her own voice. What? Shut up. I did not come here to talk with you, Brandon Stark, I came to talk to you. How dare you? How dare you say you are sorry? You think that is it, you are sorry, and everything is all right again. No, Asher. That's Lady Dane to you, you do not have my permission to call me as if we were familiar. Ashura was already fuming, and crying, she noticed. Even as she had sworn just yesterday, promised herself, that Brandon Stark would never bring her to tears again. Lady Ashura, please, I know what I did was horrible, and I never. With anyone. That is, never before or after have I ever tried to. A shrill, cutting laugh escaped Ashura's throat, and Brandon flinched at that. Good. It was clear to Ashura what he wanted to say, but did he really believe, did he have the gall to believe that it would in any way lessen his crime? What, Brandon Stark, Ashura bit out, should I consider it an honor that I alone was able to drive you to use force to try and get into my skirts? Do you think I should care I would be the only one you almost raped? Brandon Stark crumbled at that, his eyes wide and his neck frozen in a shake. No, not at all, please, listen, I didn't. No, Brandon, you don't. You do not think, you do not care. You are sorry, you were wrong, you know that, and you have forgiven yourself, is that it? You recognize your mistake, and so everyone else should recognize that is what you did. A mere mistake. Ashura was blazing, and for the first time she had seen it, Brandon looked chastised. It galled, and Ashura had to scream on. That's it, isn't it? That's exactly it. You have forgiven yourself. That's easy, right? It wasn't so difficult. After all, it's just sex. Everyone does it. You have definitely done it enough, right? I don't think father wanted to give me advice on how to sweet talk girls, but he did. Remember. You get around enough, so doing it once should not be of consequence to anyone, should it? You disgust me, Brandon. At least Brandon remained silent at that. Ashura heard the guards shuffle behind her, but she did not care. Gods, Ashura had not imagined this confrontation to feel good. I wasn't scared just the once, Brandon, I was scared for months. If someone touched me from behind, I flinched. If a man so much as smiled at me, I felt sick. I could not sleep. I could not eat. I was scared of men I've known all my life, just because of you. And that's not even mentioning the thoughts that haunted me. What if? What if I had not managed to escape? What if you had managed to rape me? What if I had fallen pregnant, just because you raped me? What if? Brandon looked scared now, even timid. This man had scared her. But you didn't. No. Don't you dare, Brandon, don't you fucking dare. Did you ever think of that? How many snows do you have running around? How many bastards elsewhere? Do you care to know? 23 women at Harrenhal, that's how many you fucked before I need you in the groin, right? My mother died in childbed. I had 2 sisters, that died in the womb. I asked Ricard, you know. I asked your father. Sarah. Donna, Lonnel. Do you even know? Brandon only gaped like fish. Sevens was Brandon Stark pathetic. And ignorant. Sarah Stark. Stillborn. Your elder sister. Donna and Lonnel Stark. Your twin brothers, a year younger than Ned. Born 4 moons early, one stillborn, the other dead within the hour. Ricard even told me where their unmarked graves in the Godswood are located. Stricken, that was what Brandon looked like. This was what Ashura had wanted to see. She kept her eyes on Brandon, not even blinking. How? Brandon asked, after what seemed like an eternity. How can I ever bring you to forgive me? There were tears swimming in his eyes now, but it was not in Ashura to ever feel remorse for Brandon Stark. You cannot. It came out as a hiss. Poison and vitriol kept inside for more than a year. You cannot ever make me forgive you, Brandon. But for a start, see to it that you never forgive yourself. Maybe someday, then, I can see you as anything else but a rapist. At that Ashura turned on her heel, not bothering to spare Ned's brother another glance. The 2 guards by the door recoiled at the thunder in Ashura's eyes, but they quickly fell in line behind her. Ashura felt all tension leave her body as the door fell shut behind her. Ashura Dane did not see Brandon Stark again even as he split from their party and headed south, and she was glad for it. As she broke for the twins, high on her horse and straight-backed like never before, Ashura felt like a queen. Notes. Title quote. Ah, damn it, Ned, did you have to bury her in a place like this? She deserves more than darkness. She was a Stark of Winterfell. This is her place. Robert Baratheon and Eddard Stark, A Game of Thrones. And that's a wrap. An emotional rite. Ha, puns. This scene was hard. I'm a little proud I brought it to paper at all. Yet, I do not believe one can ever be satisfied in portraying such a scene properly. I just do not think I could write it any better. With that in mind, I am dying for your thoughts. Also, the next update is already written, so expect it in around a day. It's 24 pages in Word detailing factions. I guess I went a little overboard with Sabron of the Blackwater's request. Anyways, the main reason updating took so long is that I've been improving the earlier chapters. Don't worry, nothing is actually rewritten. However, I was an amateur in formatting at the beginning. And pronouns. What I mean, paragraph spacing up to chapter 10 as of yet has been reworked, and I've replaced tons of he/him/his/she/her/hers/ etc. with the actual character names. And I've maybe improved a few sentences. In short, there's no need for you guys to reread anything, as the story remains entirely unchanged. As for new readers, well, lucky you, yes. Till next time. #Recardinarole. Chapter 23, Dramatis Factionis. Notes. This is the only time I'm doing this. Seriously. This was a bitch to format. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Chapter text. Factions in Westeros. Stark Lannister are in Greyjoy faction. Leaders. Rickard Stark, Jon Arryn, Tywin Lannister. Other known people of interest. Quayan Greyjoy, Roderick Stark, Kevan Lannister, Jenna Lannister Free, Tivet Lannister, Shellowent, Stephen Free, Brynden Tully, Eddard Stark, Ashura Dane, Elbereth Arryn, Cersei Lannister, Grandmaster Pycelle. Objectives. Overthrowing the Targaryen dynasty. Dissolution of the Seven Kingdoms into constituent nations. Expansion of influence in other regions of Westeros. Forces. The armies of the North, the Westerlands and the Vale. The Iron Fleet. Allied forces in the Riverlands, Went, Mallister, Blackwood, Free. The Company of the Rose and the Wolf Pack. Further assets. The custody of Rhaenys Targaryen, allowing for possible alliance with the Dornish faction. The marriage of Eddard Stark and Ashura Dane, possibly splitting the cohesion of the Dornish faction. Betrothal between Robert Baratheon and Lyanna Stark and foster brotherhood between Robert Baratheon and Eddard Stark, making an alliance with Stormland forces possible. The Gold of the Lannisters. Unofficial neutrality agreement between Lannister and Florent forces. Various spy networks in Westeros and Essos, headed by different poys of the faction. Loyalty of Grandmaster Pycelle to Tywin Lannister. Group cohesion. Good, to be cemented 4 months after the wedding that never was at the latest, through engagement of Cersei Lannister and Benjen Stark and the settling of Ironborn on the Stony Shore. Threats. Targaryen loyalist factions within, most likely in the Vale. Targaryen custody of Jaime Lannister. Known dissident forces in the constituent regions, for example forces of Balon Greyjoy, mountain clans in the Vale, conflict between houses Stark and Ryswell, the Sistermen. Alliance internal points of conflict, for example Stark support of dissident forces in the Vale. Unknown value of Robert Baratheon as possible ally as his support in the Stormlands is unclear. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. Good. Probably. Aerys II Targaryen's faction. Leader. Aerys II Targaryen. Other people of interest. Owen Merryweather, Carlton Chelstead, Simund Staunton, the High Septon, Grandmaster Pycelle, in theory, Varys the Spider, in theory, Lucerys Valerian, in theory, Rolla Targaryen, in theory. Objectives. Keeping Aerys II on the Iron Throne. Disinheriting the pesky Crown Prince and installing Viserys Targaryen as heir. Burn stuff. Forces. The Loyalist armies throughout the Seven Kingdoms, particularly in the Crown Lands, the Riverlands, the Vale, the Stormlands, and the Reach. The Dornish army, as long as it is not pointed against Rickard Stark. The Royal Fleet and the Red Wine Fleet. The Kingsguard. The Gold Cloaks. Further assets. The custody of Elia Martell and Aegon Targaryen, binding the Dornish forces to the throne. The custody of Jaime Lannister, forcing Tywin to support Aerys, in theory. The most legitimate claim to the Iron Throne at present. The Pyromancers Guild. A liaison of the institution that is the Iron Throne has been sent to the Sistermen. Group cohesion. Poor. Just, poor. Threats. Aerys II Targaryen. Aerys II Targaryen's lack of support amongst the nobility and the small folk, a problem in its own, and in comparison to Rhaegar Targaryen's support amongst both nobility and small folk. A split in the loyalist faction in support for Aerys and Rhaegar. Unclear loyalty of Aerys in a circle, including the small council, the Kingsguard and his wife. There is a not so small possibility that Aerys might just say fuck it and burn them all. Tywin Lannister might just decide Jaime is a lost cause and fight against Aerys anyways. Did I mention Aerys Targaryen? Like, in general. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. Reasonably well regarding Aerys. He is not complicated. Regarding his allies. Proceed with caution. Rhaegar Targaryen's faction. Leader. Rhaegar Targaryen. Other people of interest. Jon Connington, Miles Mouton, Richard Lunmouth, Arthur Dayne, Elia Martell, in theory, Rhaegar Targaryen, in theory. Objectives. Getting Aerys II off the Iron Throne and putting Rhaegar there. Preparing the Seven Kingdoms against prophesied threats. Breeding a third head for the dragon, preferably with Lyanna Stark. Not burn stuff. I think this deserves a mention. Founding West AOC idol and dominate the competition with dreamy voice and kick-ass harp skills, #fan submission. Forces. Household troops of Dragonstone. Loyalist forces that do not like Aerys anymore. Loyalist forces that do not like other loyalist forces anymore. Some non-loyalist forces that like neither Aerys nor any other factions. Further assets. Marriage to Elia Martell and father to Aegon Targaryen, lending possibility to garner Dornish support. More liked than Aerys due to not burning stuff. Second best claim to the Iron Throne at present. Very open to negotiating with other factions. Connington is garnering support in the Stormlands. A liaison of the institution that is the Iron Throne has been sent to the Sisterman. Rhaegar might not have a problem with polygamy and can, therefore, bind more houses through marriage. Group cohesion. Used to be good, pre-Tony at Harrenhal. Used to be okay, pre-Lyanna Stark's disappearance. Now. Questionable. Threats. Aerys II Targaryen. Rickard Stark. The lords and small folk are disillusioned with Rhaegar's conduct regarding Lyanna Stark. Rhaegar's Dornish allies are probably unhappy. Including his wife. Rhaegar's wife, who is a captive of his father. Whoopsie. Rhaegar's allies in the Kingsguard are definitely unhappy. The Starks have Rhaegar's daughter and his best friend's sister. Rhaegar might be disinherited in favor of his little brother. Rhaegar's prophecies might just be wrong, or they might not apply. Rhaegar might just be mad because of incest, but at least he does not burn stuff. Yet. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. Definitely not complete. Expect the unexpected. Aegon VI Targaryen's faction. Leaders. Rhaegar Targaryen, Elia Martell. Other people of interest. Aegon VI Targaryen, Lucerys Valerian, Jaime Lannister, the most devout. Objectives. Maintaining Targaryen rule in Westeros. Getting Aerys II off the Iron Throne, preventing Rhaegar from taking said throne and securing it for baby Aegon. Re-establishing credibility in the Targaryen dynasty. Ensuring Rhaenys Targaryen's safety and maybe getting her back. Occupation of prominent positions during Aegon's regency. Pacify the North, the Vale, the Westerlands, the Stormlands and Dawn again after Aerys and Rhaegar's many fuck-ups. Survive. Forces. The Royal Fleet. Loyalist forces looking for a better alternative than either Aerys or Rhaegar. Jaime Lannister. Further assets. Almost no one knows that there actually is an Aegon VI Targaryen faction, leaving Aegon VI Targaryen without explicit enemies. Rhaegar is cutting deals with the most devout. What kind of deals? Good question. No one knows that the Royal Fleet's loyalty lies with Rhaegar. Loans from the Iron Bank of undisclosed amounts. If Aegon gets a Regency Council, positions are up to be bartered. Aegon has the third best claim to the Iron Throne at present. Dornish support for Aegon's claim is all but ensured. Both Rhaegar's and Elia's hand might be available for further alliances. Jaime Lannister might sway Tywin Lannister to their side. Lysa Tully might become lady-in-waiting for Elia Martell. Group cohesion. Tentative. Depending on the decisions of Doran Martell, Elia might split. Otherwise good. Threats. Almost no one knows that there actually is an Aegon VI Targaryen faction, leaving Aegon VI Targaryen without explicit allies. Both Aerys Targaryen and Rhaegar Targaryen. All the leaders of this faction are currently hostages. Possibly Starks, Lannisters and Arryns. Leaving the loyalist forces too splintered, or the faith. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. Spotty. Hearsay and speculation. Maybe Rolla just rediscovered her faith. Tarth faction. Leader. Selwyn Tarth. Other people of interest. Galadon Tarth, Septarol aka Wender the White Fawn. Objectives. Net gain of influence and wealth for House Tarth. Eradication of House Caffin, or at least the Lord and his heir. Forces. The army of House Tarth. The remnants of the Kingswood Brotherhood. Further assets. Links to the leadership of the Golden Company. Allied with House Swan. Very mercenary in attitude, can choose the winning side. Geographically easily defensible on an island in Shipbreakers Bay. Group cohesion. Great. I mean, does it count as a group if it is basically just one dude as of yet? Threats. Golden Company might have better offers or different loyalties. The other factions might just take issue with the Golden Company coming to Westeros again. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. Lackluster. We only know the barest of the bare bones of the Tarths. As of now. Dornish faction. Leader. Doran Martell. Other people of interest. Oberyn Martell, Melorio of Norphos, Ormond Uranwood, Aereo Hotter. Objectives. The safety of Elia Martell, Rhaenys Targaryen and Aegon Targaryen. Securing the birthright of Aegon VI Targaryen to the Iron Throne. The expansion of Dornish influence. Forces. The Army of Dorne. Further assets. Diplomatic ties with Norphos and the Bearded Priests. Possible alliance with the Stark Lannister Arryn faction. Possible alliance with the Aegon VI Targaryen faction. Connections with the Second Sons. Group cohesion. Tight. Keeping it all in the family. Mostly. Threats. Aerys Targaryen has custody of both Elia Martell and Aegon Targaryen. Rickard Stark has custody of Rhaenys Targaryen. The situation in Essos is becoming difficult. House Dane's loyalty may be to another faction, possibly Rhaegar Targaryen's or Rickard Stark's. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. Unclear. We only have the lens of a non-native to go by. Though, she does have a better grasp on the Essos situation. Florent Tully faction. Leader. Alistair Florent. Other people of interest. Hoster Tully, Randil Tully, Jon Bracken. Objectives. Taking the paramountcy of the Reach away from the Tyrells. Maintaining the paramountcy of the Riverlands in the hands of House Tully. Keeping a Targaryen king on the Iron Throne for stability. Forces. The army of House Florent and its allies, including House Tully and House Crane. The army of the Riverlands loyal to House Tully. Further assets. Unofficial agreement of neutrality with House Lannister in return for land concessions in the Reach. Presumably, the element of surprise regarding the Tully-Florent coalition when attacking House Tyrell on different fronts. Probably the neutrality of House Hightower, as Old Town is sandwiched between Hornhill and Brightwater Keep and as Lytton Hightower is married to Rhea Florent. The nominal leader of their primary enemy faction is Mace Tyrell. Group cohesion. Probably very good. Everyone's family or about to be family. And the Tullys, specifically Hoster, were given a chance to keep a hold of power through this alliance. Necessity builds trust. Threats. House Tyrell commands more men than House Florent. Right now. The Red Wines are linked to the Tyrells twice in as many generations. The neutrality agreement with Tywin Lannister is unofficial. Hornhill borders Dorne. The Hightowers might break their neutral stance. Both the Reach and the Riverlands are politically very fractured. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. Unknown. All available information is based on the testimony of third people. Tyrell faction. Leaders. Mace Tyrell, nominally, Olenna Tyrell, actually. Other people of interest. Paxter Redwine, Mathis Rowan, Aowen O'Kurt, Minor Tyrell. Objectives. Maintaining the Tyrells' paramountcy in the Reach. Maintaining the Targaryen dynasty's hegemony in the Seven Kingdoms. Protecting the Reach's territory from infringements from other kingdoms. Quelling the expected Florent revolt. Forces. The armies of the Tyrells, the Rowans and the Okurts as well as other sworn banners. The Red Wine Fleet. Further assets. Minor Tyrell is heading towards Essos to procure sellsword companies and slave soldiers. Vast funds in the Bank of Old Town. Mace's 3 sons are available for betrothal contracts. Mutual support with the Targaryen faction, probably Aes, maybe additionally with Aegons. Group cohesion. A tight core exists, primarily between those houses bound by marriage, Tyrell and Redwyne primarily, Rowan to a lesser degree. The prioritization of the objectives of houses Rowan and Okurt is likely to differ from that of the Tyrells. Threats. The Florents. Dawn and the Westerlands. Maybe the Riverlands and Stormlands. At least one of the Targaryen factions. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. The basic information is probably solid, but much else might be based on speculation. Hightower faction. Leader. Lytton Hightower. Other people of interest. The Starry Septon, Malara Hightower, Maester Marwyn, the Seneschal and the Conclave, maybe. Objectives. Continued prosperity of House Hightower. Continued unity of the faith. Neutrality in the coming war. Ideally a Tyrell victory in the Reach. Ideally a power shift in the faith from King's Landing to Old Town. Ascertaining the current state of magic and the inherent dangers of it. Forces. The army of House Hightower. The Old Town City Guard. Further assets. Familial ties to both the Tyrell and the Florent Tully faction. Large amounts of influence with the faith in the Reach and beyond. Large amounts of influence with the Citadel and the assignment of Maesters. Ownership of the Bank of Old Town. Group cohesion. Difficult. The objectives of House Hightower may differ from the objectives of the Starry September and the Citadel. Little is known. Threats. A protracted civil war in the Reach, forcing the Hightowers to pick a side. A fracturing of the faith. Varys being up to stuff. Known status as former Blackfyre supporters. Whatever is happening to magic, though, that may be a threat to everyone. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. Obtuse. Anything dealing with magic is. The stance of the Citadel in general is unclear. System and faction. Leader. Tristan Sunderland, nominally, Grendel Borrell, actually. Other people of interest. Gardrick Borrell. Objectives. To be left to their own devices. To continue as a safe harbour for smugglers. For House Borrell to usurp House Sunderland. Forces. Armies and fleets of the sisters. Smugglers. Further assets. Offer to be installed as fleet harbour from the Iron Throne. Control of the Bight. Geographic defensibility, and manipulation of guiding lights. Diplomatic mission with the Starks. Group cohesion. Hard to guess. Probably no fondness between Borrells and Sunderlands. Information may be faulty. Threats. Any type of law enforcement. Tax collectors. Victims of piracy. Potentially the Vale, the North, or the Iron Throne. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. False information is a pet peeve of Systemen. They use fake guiding lights to sink ships. Therefore, never trust information from a Systemen. The Night's Watch. Leader. Lord Commander Corgyle. Other people of interest. Maester Aemon Targaryen, denies Malister, Maester Mullin. Objectives. To hold the wall. To guard the realms of men. Forces. Tilde 1.000 Brothers of the Night's Watch. Some ships off Eastwatch by the sea. Further assets. Not involved in internal conflicts of the Seven Kingdoms. Probably halfway decent relationship with several noble houses of the north. Familial ties to the Targaryen dynasty. Probably the support of Rhaegar Targaryen against vague threats of prophecy. Group cohesion. Unknown. A penal colony of murderers, rapists, and thieves with the odd volunteer. Does not seem to be a promising mix. Threats. Those who come with the cold. The wildlings, or free folk. Decline of the order over a time of tilde 280 years. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. Terrible. We have not seen the brothers of the Night's Watch interact with each other a lot. Faction of those who come with the cold. Leader. He who rules the winds of winter. Other people of interest. He who buries mountains in snow. Objectives. Forces. An unknown number of White Walkers and Ice Spiders. Further assets. A treaty with House Stark. Magic. Group cohesion. Unknown. Leader known as God King, though. Might have different connotation within the other race. Threats. The Night's Watch, probably. Humanity, maybe. The children of the forest, likely. Fire and obsidian, they know. Valyrian steel, they do not know. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. Lackluster. Most information is dated, around 8.000 years old. Much is lost. Do not trust anything. Miscellaneous factions in Westeros. Diverse factions we have not seen much of, but which are, probably, there, somewhere in Westeros, of which we know little to nothing in terms of leaders, people of interest, objectives, forces, assets, group cohesion or threats. Former Blackfyr supporters, amongst others House Peak, House Butterwell, House Osgrey. The regional centers of the faith in King's Landing and Old Town and beyond, presumably in Sunspear, White Harbor, Highgarden, and the Eyrie. The mountain clansmen of the Vale. The green men on the Isle of Faces. The orphans of the green blood. The different free folk tribes beyond the wall. The Citadel. Pirate kings in the Stepstones, debatable whether that counts as Westeros or Essos. Factions in Essos. Blackfyr faction. Leader. Serra Blackfyr. Other people of interest. Varys Blackfyr, Illyrio Patis. Objectives. Usurpation of the Iron Throne and overthrowing of the Targaryen dynasty. Re-establishing House Blackfyr in Westeros. Forces. Further assets. Varys Blackfyr, sitting on the small council as Master of Whispers, supports House Blackfyr. The Blackfyrs command a vast spy network in Westeros and Essos. House Blackfyr possesses known connections to the Golden Company. House Blackfyr possesses known connections to many noble houses in Westeros. Illyrio Patis is rich, filthy rich. Slaves. Group cohesion. Tight. Serra has her co-conspirators by the balls. Literally. Threats. Many connections to houses in Westeros are defunct. Miles Tywin, leader of the Golden Company, might prioritize other things above Blackfyr supremacy. There is no eligible male claimant to the Iron Throne of the Blackfyr line. The Blackfyrs are not exactly the most popular family in Westeros. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. Difficult to evaluate. Varys might be running a counterintelligence campaign. The Golden Company. Leader. Miles Tywin. Other people of interest. Harry Strickland, Black Ballock. Objectives. Money. Restoration of exiled Westerosi houses. Maybe replacing the Targaryen dynasty with House Blackfyr. Forces. 10,000 fighting men, including 500 knights and 1,000 bowmen. 25 war elephants. Further assets. Ties to the Tarth faction. Ties to the Blackfyr faction. Ties to numerous houses in Westeros. Maybe possession of the Valyrian steel sword Blackfyr. Stellar reputation among all free cities and other forces in Essos. Group cohesion. Unknown. Threats. Mistrusted in Westeros due to support of Blackfyr rebellions. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. Uncertain. Proceed with caution. Bravo Sea factions. Leader. Sealord, disputed. Other people of interest. Syrio Keyholder, Magister, faceless men. Objectives, varied, but include. Continued Bravo Sea hegemony at sea. Suppression and control of Pentos and Lorath. Abundant trade. Economic interests of the Iron Bank. The abolishment of slavery. That Volantis remains ruled by the elephants. Forces. Fleet of Bravos. Army of Bravos. Contracted sellsword companies. Further assets. Fighting bravos in the city, possible to conscript. The Faceless Men. The elite guard of the Sea Lord, including the first sword of bravos. The economic power of the Iron Bank. Pentos and Lorath remain under Bravo Sea influence. Group cohesion. Cordial between some forces within, not so much with others. Difficult to estimate. Threats. Volantis, if it comes to be ruled by tigers. Dothraki. Norphos. Revolts in Pentos and / or Lorath. Possibly Iben. Possibly Myr, Tiosh and / or Lies. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. Mostly speculative. Pentoshi factions. Leader. Prince of Pentos, largely ceremonial. Other people of interest. Magister, Iliomapatis, Serra Blackfear. Objectives. Independence from Bravo Sea influence and repeal of concessions. Independent pursuit of wealth by the various Magister. Forces. 20 warships. Further assets. Great wealth of the many Magisters. Relatively good rapport with the Dothraki. Group cohesion. Probably pathetic. Threats. Bravos. Volantis, if it comes to be ruled by the tigers. Dothraki. Possibly Myr, Tiosh, Lies, Norphos and / or Cohor. The Windblown Sellsword Company. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. Terrible. Seriously. Mirish factions. Leader. Other people of interest. Magister. Objectives. Maintaining their technological advantage in manufacturing. Conquest of disputed lands and the stepstones. Forces. Mirish fleet. Crossbow companies. Further assets. Great wealth of the many Magisters. Relatively good rapport with the Dothraki. Technological advantage. Group cohesion. Also probably pathetic. Better than Pentos, though. Threats. Tiosh and Lies. Volantis, if it comes to be ruled by the tigers. Dothraki. Possibly Bravos, Norphos and / or Cohor. Pirate kings of the Stepstones. Summer Islander slave liberators. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. Terrible. Seriously. Tiroshi factions. Leader. Archon of Tiosh. Other people of interest. Magister. Objectives. Control of the dye market. Conquest of disputed lands and the stepstones. Forces. Tiroshi fleet. Further assets. Great wealth of the many Magisters. Relatively good rapport with the Dothraki. Group cohesion. Also probably pathetic. Better than Pentos, though. Threats. Lies and Myr. Volantis, if it comes to be ruled by the tigers. Dothraki. Possibly Bravos, Norphos and / or Cohor. Pirate kings of the Stepstones. Summer Islander slave liberators. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. Terrible. Seriously. Lysani factions. Leader. First Magister of Lies. Other people of interest. Gonfolonia, Magister. Objectives. Hegemony in the trades of flesh and poisons. Conquest of disputed lands and the stepstones. Forces. Lysani fleet. Further assets. Great wealth of the many Magisters. Relatively good rapport with the Dothraki. Group cohesion. Also probably pathetic. Better than Pentos, though. Threats. Tiosh and Myr. Volantis, if it comes to be ruled by the tigers. Dothraki. Possibly Bravos, Norphos and / or Cohor. Pirate kings of the Stepstones. Summer Islander slave liberators. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. Terrible. Seriously. Norvoshi faction. Leader. Head of the Church of the Bearded Priests, unknown. Other people of interest. Bearded Priests, Magister, Melario of Norphos. Objectives. Continued dominance of the Bearded Priests in Norphos and the expansion of their influence. Pulling Lorath into its sphere of influence, replacing Bravos, and gaining control of their port on the Shivering Sea. Eradication of the Church of the Black Goat of Kohor. Forces. Holy Guard. Further assets. Diplomatic ties with Dawn and House Martell. Relatively good rapport with the Dothraki. Historical alliances with Kohor against expansionist Volanten ambitions. Fanatical zealots. Group cohesion. Monolithic. Bearded brother is watching you. Threats. Bravos. Volantis, if it comes to be ruled by the Tigers. Dothraki. Historical enmity with Kohor, in particular the Church of the Black Goat of Kohor. Possibly Tiosh, lies. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. Reasonably solid. Horribly incomplete, though. Kohori faction. Leader. Fractured. Other people of interest. Priests of the Black Goat, sorcerers. Objectives. Continued dominion over the forest of Kohor. Continued control of trading routes to V's Dothrak. Maintaining their advantage in smithing technologies. Freedom from roaming Dothraki culls, especially culls Echo at the moment. Forces. Small city watch. Unsullied contingents. Further assets. Well-established Hunters Guild. Superior weapons and armor. Historical alliances with Norphos against expansionist Volanten ambitions. Fanatical zealots. Group cohesion. Generally terrible, but united against foreign threats. Threats. Dothraki. Volantis, if it comes to be ruled by the Tigers. Historical enmity with Norphos, in particular between the Church of the Black Goat and the Bearded Priests. Possibly Tiosh, lies. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. Uncertain and largely incomplete. Volanten factions. Leaders. Elephants, Dornifos Penimian, second triarch of the elephants. Tigers, Malakwo Magai. Slave insurgency, the widow of the waterfront, Grace. Church of Arla, High Priest Benero. Criminal gangs, the fourth yearling, the father of orphans, the slumdog keeper, the prince of knives, the widow of the waterfront. Other people of interest. General Bravano Tagaros, Tigers, Batanes the Bloody Blade, second in command to the Prince of Knives. Objectives. Elephants, proliferation of trade. Tigers, military expansion. Slave insurgency, freedom for the enslaved and the abolition of slavery. Church of Arla, defeating the Great Other. Criminal gangs, proliferation of wealth, increase in influence. Forces. Elephants and tigers, the armies of Volantis, slave companies, sellswords, the city guard. Slave insurgency, the enslaved proletariat. Church of Arla, the fiery hand, zealots. Criminal gangs, enforcers, murderers, thieves, fences, pickpockets, informants, etc. Further assets. Unity of tigers and elephants, overall leadership subject to yearly election of triarchs. Accord reached between criminal gangs about division of the city and specialization of work. Slave insurgency and Church of Arla speak to the same people, partially aligning interests. Group cohesion. Varied. Too many groups to go into detail. Dependent on external threats. Threats. Something is wrong with magic. Does the Lord of Light have the answer? Will he tell his followers? The slave insurgency does not really get along with members of the old blood, be they elephants or tigers. Not surprising, considering they have to be slaves to someone before they are freed. The tigers coming into power would probably see the entirety of the rest of the free cities find common ground against them. Whoopsie. Dothraki. Bravos, Kohor and Norphos, the three daughters. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. Sketchy. While the political forces are well established and the Church of Arla a known quantity, the other forces are operating in the underground. Maybe there isn't even a slave insurgency. Lorathi faction. Leaders. Harvest Prince, Fisher Prince and Prince of the Streets, nominally, Council of Magisters, publicly, Bravosi Ambassador, hush hush behind the scenes. Other people of interest. Magister, textile merchants. Objectives. Continued protection of Bravos against Ibinese and Norvoshi incursions. Greater autonomy beneath Bravo's boot. Maintaining their significant stake in the textile trade. Continued control of Marash and its further colonial development. Control and acknowledgement thereof of the Bay of Lorath and its fishing grounds. Continued survival in relative isolation. Forces. 1,000 contracted sellswords under the banner of the Second Sons. Further assets. Nobody really considers Lorath a threat to their own interest, they really aren't. Lorath status as a Bravo Sea protectorate, preferred euphemism in Lorath for puppet state. It is unlikely that even an expansionist Volantis under Tiger rule would grow powerful enough to bother threatening Lorath's meager objectives. Lorath itself is comprised of islands. Dothraki don't bother them, because water. I just have to repeat this, Dothraki don't bother Lorath, because water. Group cohesion. Like. I don't know. Seriously, it took me several read-throughs to realize I forgot writing a Lorathi faction. They're, like, really insignificant. Nobody cares to know how well they stick together, for even United Lorath isn't really a threat to anyone. Threats. Bravos increasing their protection fee and their raiding of Lorathi fishing grounds. Iben increasing their raiding of Lorathi fishing grounds, or straight up seizing Marash as their own colony. Norphos gaining an interest in acquiring a shivering seaport. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. There is a Lorath. That much is certain. Aside from that, everyone agrees Lorath is too insignificant to bother gathering in-depth intelligence on. Carthene factions. Leader. Pureborn, sitters of 1,000 thrones. The 13, among them Zarok's Hone Daxos. Tourmalin Brotherhood, the Tourmalin Father. Ancient Guild of Spicers, the most ancient guild master. Sorrowful Men, the Man of Sorrows. House of the Undying, Undying Ones. Other people of interest. Keeper of the long list, opener of the door. Objectives. Pureborn, power and influence. 13. Tourmalin Brotherhood, ancient guild of spicers, proliferation of trade and wealth. Sorrowful Men, proliferation of wealth, assignments. House of the Undying, immortality, the Philosopher's Stone, the One Ring. Forces. Pureborn, civic guard, camelry, Carthene fleet. 13. Tourmalin Brotherhood, ancient guild of spicers, merchant fleets, sellswords. Sorrowful Men, themselves. House of the Undying, warlocks. Further assets. The Pureborn control the Jade Gates, giving them the possibility to disrupt mercantile trade. The three merchant organizations are wealthy. Very wealthy. The Sorrowful Men serve the highest bidder, their contracts are not personal. Who even knows what tricks the warlocks have hidden? Group cohesion. Depending on the faction atrocious to great. Threats. Dothraki. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. Karth is a place far away, so information may be exaggerated, outdated and sometimes simply wrong. Scratch that. Information exaggerated, outdated and sometimes simply wrong. Dothraki factions. Leader. Dos Hkaline, Kulls, for example Kulls. Other people of interest. Objectives. Fight. Fuck. Feast. Forces. Hordes of light cavalry. Further assets. Support of Slavers Bay. Wealth in gifts from the free cities and Karth. Fearsome reputation, free cities and Karth bribe them rather than fight them. Group cohesion. Inside V's Dothrak. Good. Outside V's Dothrak. Bad. Threats. Kingdom of the Ifakevron, do they even still exist? Literally every city in Essos west of the Bone Mountains, but they would rather bribe the Dothraki. Iben is pissed because their colonies are gone, a few times over. Every Dothraki in V's Dothrak is unarmed. Dunno, dragons. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. As Dothraki do not have a written language and their knowledge is passed on orally, the truth contained in this report may have changed on the way. Slavers Bay factions. Leaders. Myrene, Great Masters. Yunkai, Wise Masters. Astapa, Good Masters. Nugis. Temple of the Graces, Green Graces, Myrenes Green Grace, Garlets Galere. Other people of interest. Objectives. Proliferation of wealth by trading in slaves. Forces. Myrene, city guard, pit slaves, slave swordsmen. Yunkai, around 5,000 slave soldiers. Astapa, unsullied, pit slaves, mounted Astapori guards. Nugis, iron legions. Further assets. Good relations with the Dothraki. Wealthy slavers. Good business relations with all Essosi cities except Bravos. Group cohesion. Unknown. Threats. Dothraki. Bravos. Summer Islanders. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. Non-existent. Sathi faction. Leader. Other people of interest. Objectives. Re-establishing the Kingdom of Sonya. Reconquest of the area of the Kingdom of Sonya. Killing Dothraki. Forces. Further assets. Iben's got their back, probably. Group cohesion. No idea. Threats. Dothraki. Bravos. Iben withdrawing their protection. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. No. Just, no. Ibenese faction. Leaders. Sitters on the Shadow Council. Other people of interest. The Thousand. Objectives. Hegemony in the Shivering Sea. Monopoly on the whale trade. Re-establishment of Ibenese colonies in northern Essos. Forces. Large fleets. Penal colony soldiers from Imbeciles. Further assets. Great wealth. Great defensibility. Good trade relations with pretty much every seafaring nation. Group cohesion. Unknown. Threats. Dothraki. Bravo sea fleets. Slavers. Quality and accuracy of information in this report. Scratching the bottom of the barrel. Miscellaneous factions in Essos and the rest of the known world. Diverse factions we have not seen much of, but which are, probably, there, somewhere in Essos, Aldhos, Sothorios or in between, of which we know little to nothing about people of interest, objectives, forces, assets, group cohesion or threats. Diverse sellsword companies in Essos, for example. Second Sons, Windblown. Summer Islander factions, divers. Nath. Pirates of the Basilisk Isles. Lazarine, Hesh, Lazush, Khosrak. Mantries, Illyria, Tolus. Portios, Karkash, under Carthi influence. Cities on the Cinnamon Straits, Faroes, Vehar, Port Morok, Zubud. Jogoznai. Kingdom of Engai, Nefer. Yeti. Len. Church of Starry Wisdom. Factions of Ashai by the Shadow. Shadowbinders. Spellsinger. Aeromancers. Warlocks. Notes. With this party of idiots, lackwits and imbeciles, the trials of Ricard Stark trying to save Westeros from incompetence has reached its conclusion. As I mentioned in the notes of chapter 22, I'll take some time to iron out the kinks in chapters 11 to 21. What I didn't mention is that I'm also writing a short 3-chapter story that has nothing to do with any of my stories that won't leave my head. The entire thing will be published first before the next chapter here comes up. Different from my stories so far, my new story is not going to be an or. Promises Broken, working title, will be set within the Asoyaf canon entirely, maybe given you guys a new outlook on stuff. Well. Eloquent as always. Stay tuned, enjoy, so long, Ricard in a roll. Chapter 24, Burn Them All. Notes. What about Aerys Targaryen? What did the Mad King say, when you stabbed him in the back? I never asked. Did he call you a traitor? Did he plead for a reprieve? He just said the same thing he'd been saying for hours. Burn them all. Robert Baratheon and Jaime Lannister, Game of Thrones, Season 1 Episode 4, Lord Snow. Gasp. A show quote. Blasphemy. Generally, yes. Though, IMO, first few seasons are free game, mostly, and there is no equally poignant quote to describe Aerys' madness in the books. And this chapter deals, after all, with a breed of madmen. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Chapter text. Walder Free was an irascible man, and despite his long life he had never learned how to forgive a slight. That said, if you were not the target of Walder's ire yourself, the man was highly amusing. Ricard was almost sorry that he was going to kill Walder at the twins. But Ricard would not suffer a liability to live if it did not have its uses. Until the time came that Ricard to cross that bridge, though, Ricard was going to spend a grand time with Walder Free. The old sot that Walder was, he had a long life with a treasure trove of stories to tell. Sure, the majority of Walder's life experiences was "fucked that wench, knocked up this looker or the tits on the one hooker that gave me this nasty pox, you wouldn't believe it." But then there were just a few short tidbits in between, a few diamonds in the filth that was Walder Free's existence, that were not just entertaining but also highly informative. Ricard had never known that House Butterwell had plans to start an uprising at the same time as House Peak in 233. If Walder Free had not stopped Ambrose Butterwell's eldest son and Walder's own sister from their folly, the old House Butterwell would probably not have existed anymore. Of course, that information was just a side note in a story about Walder's sister fucking the young Lord Butterwell instead of her husband the old Lord Butterwell. Apparently, depravity ran in the family. A few years later, after the Peak Uprising had died its inglorious death, the young Lord Butterwell had then gifted Walder a treasure trove in old Butterwell vintages as thanks. Well, Ricard did prefer his grain brandy, but he had to admit it was a shame the Riverlands lost their best vineyard after the Second Black Fear Rebellion. As for the now remaining stocks, well, it seemed old Walder was determined not to leave any of the good wine behind for his descendants. He was drinking the good stuff at least twice a week, and apparently the wine paired perfectly with Luce, Walder's favorite. By the amount that Walder told that he imbibed the stuff, Ricard doubted the man would survive another decade. But then again, Walder looked like he should have kicked the bucket a decade ago. More disturbing a revelation was that Brynden Rivers had used the twins as a cornerstone for his spy network in the Riverlands from 212 until 233, and that the Raven's eyes had been dispersed along the Trident in the same manner the Cregan's men were. Egon V had truly been a fool to sentence Bloodraven to the wall. In one move the unlikely had blinded and declawed the Iron Throne. True, Bloodraven had been heavy-handed as the force behind the crown. However, his raven's teeth had been the deterrent and his raven's eyes the insurance that forced the realm's lords to comply through 3 Black Fear rebellions instead of defecting or remaining neutral. Such a tool begged to be used. Well, Ricard was glad his own forefathers never relinquished control of either their eyes or their stick, and Ricard would not fail his ancestors in that regard. Neither would Ned, after some thorough teaching. And gods, did Ned need teaching on how to rule? Jon Arryn had forged Ned into a formidable soldier and battle commander. However, the Lord Paramount of the Vale had mostly neglected teaching Ned politics, cunning and intrigue. Ned's straightforwardness would have to be bent. And Ned would have to learn that honor only flew as high as necessity allowed. For this purpose, Ricard had been riding out with Ned daily since they met off Daeari, to discuss matters of ruling. During these daily jaunts Ricard had also been slowly whittling away Ned's aversion to using spies. A truly foolish notion, that. They had met 2 other regional leaders besides Tom of Riverrun since Ricard and his party had broken for the north. 2 women named Jane, one who had been tilling a field close to Fairmarket and the other who had sold fish near Old Stones where Ricard and company had crossed the Blue Fork. The Jane at Old Stones had left Ned thinking on the use of spies by informing them that the second son of Lord Nayland of Hagsmire was getting away with raping a woman of the small folk because nobody dared speaking up. Of course, Ned saw it as a question of justice, a problem to set right. Ricard would need to instruct Ned on the worth of leverage instead. Today they were going to meet another informant. This one was acting a ferryman across the Green Fork a day's ride south of the Twins. The Cregan's man at this junction was likely rather high in the hierarchy of the Cregan's men, seeing that he controlled an independent crossing of the river the phrase claimed dominion of. A lot of intelligence on the way north was bound to flow through this man's hands. Ricard would not have known he was to meet this Cregan's man if a rider had not come down from the Twins with a letter from Old Man Robard. The letter had been rather short. Just a missive, actually, that Lionel had crossed the neck and entered the north proper. But hidden in code, and only visible when heated over a candle, the paper revealed a set of coordinates and a time. Old Man Robard never simply sent a letter. Of course, aside from the reigning Lord of Winterfell, almost nobody in the north or the rest of the world knew that it was always a member of House Sewin that headed the entirely intelligence available to the Starks. It rarely was the Lord of Castle Sewin that took up these duties. The duty had only fallen to Lord Robard because he had been an only child, and because Robard had been married to Argella Stark besides. The last time a Lord Sewin headed the office of Commander of Intelligence before Robard, it had been the best friend of Cregan Stark. That Lord Sewin had forged the Cregan's men out of Cregan's unblooded host and the ashes that had remained of the Torrens men. Well, that had been a necessity, considering Emond One Eye and Vigor had scorched the Riverlands so thoroughly that barely a tenth of the Torrens men had survived. Still, never before had the Northern spy network permeated so thoroughly through all societal layers south of the neck than in the time Cregan's dearest friend had woven the network anew himself. By now, the Cregan's men were even making headway into the lower rungs of the faith. Hopefully, old man Robard's second son could lead the office as well as his father when his time came. Gods beware, Cai Sewin never managed to train an heir for the position of spymaster. Robard had to keep his lordly heir Major from the family business due to Majors, lacking mental faculties, to be delicate. Now Ricard and Ned were out on their daily ride, and coincidentally they were making a stop along Green Fork. Just after the sun had passed its zenith for the day, just as planned. Ahead of them a nondescript-looking ferryman was offloading a huckster and a tinker, it looked like. Ricard briefly wondered if the two traveling salesmen were Cregan's men as well, but already the peddlers were gone in a blink. Instead, the ferryman hailed Ricard and Ned when they came into view. "I greet Cregan's Get." There was a kindly smile to the ferryman as he welcomed Ricard and Ned. "I'm Tom." "Cregan's Get greets you, Tom." Ricard returned Tom's smile just as kindly, and Ricard had to bite down a true smile as Ned startled beside him. Well, the name Jane was common enough that Ned did not need to question it when the two women of the Cregan's men shared the name. 2 times a pattern, though, and Ricard was happy Ned caught on quick. Now Ricard's heir would just need to learn to mask his surprise. "What news have you for us, Tom?" "News, my lord, and a package from the north." "Won't you step onto my barge for our talk? I've kept your box beneath my seat, and I will be glad to be rid of it." This Tom had been made aware of the contents of the box. Surprising, that. The ferryman must have been one of the highest officers beneath old man Robard. The ferry started out onto the river, and after Tom had punted the barge a little further up the stream the ferryman dropped the anchor in the middle of the river. Tom passed Ricard a wooden chest of polished sentinel pine, closed by a delicate seal of beeswax with thistles emblazoned. Ricard cracked the seal and carefully opened the lid to check the contents. Everything Ricard needed was inside. The box was separated into 5 compartments and held the necessary tools. 2 pairs of castle-forged tongs. A fine brush. Gloves made of treated dog skin. A single gold dragon in a bed of velvet. A crystalline phial containing a transparent liquid with a light metal shine to it. "Thank you," Ricard said softly as he carefully closed the box again. Tom looked well rid of it, and Ricard did not begrudge it the man. Ned looked a little confused by it all, but Ricard would not tell Ned about one of House Stark's most well-guarded secrets in the presence of another. After all, Ricard did not know how much Tom was aware of. "You have news for me, Tom?" Ricard asked, after the most important part of their meeting was done. "Yes, my lord, plenty. News from the north were given to me along with the box. There were some false trails, of course, but with the right key I was able to decipher 5 messages meant for you, Lord Ricard." "False trails? It never got hold." Ricard suppressed a chuckle and left Tom to transmit the messages. "I have received your orders, and I am now hosting the lady and her son in my guest wing. Congratulations. Every friend has been invited. The kids are coming to dinner. Turf has been restocked. I did not leave a stone untouched. As you have bidden, the cavalry will greet you at the gate in force. You were right, the fillies have shown themselves temperamental. A new visitor has arrived. He has old burns on his hands, and he is asking for help. He has been given shelter, yet I did not dare treat him. The troubadours are coming, uninvited. Many are already here. They sing of peace. Well. Fuck. Those news ranged from wonderful to disastrous. At least the second code layer kept Tom from knowing the meaning of the words Robard had sent. These are your answers, Tom. Use the same channels. Ricard turned the words and phrases over in his head before he spoke on. 5 answers and 1 report. Robard would know what to do. Give them shelter. The father will ride with me from the gate. Unity and force. Fix the sieve. Divide and conquer. Test options. Do not. Keep sheltered. Await further instructions. Send the gaolers and stoke the flames. Alert the kids. Peace is the domain of gods. The first bachelor remains as is. Keep watch but keep calm. Tom took out a piece of twine and started making knots. True stories and false trails. Ricard did not know how to read the knots himself, the code was almost unbreakable. The second layer was only a precaution in case one of Ricard's spies ever sang. Ned was keeping a good fake it through it all, but Ricard remembered the time when his own father Edwile had taken Ricard to meet old man Robard. Ricard himself had been 20 years old then. Through 5 meetings Ricard had tried to get a grasp of the code on his own, but it had been impossible. Well, Ricard understood now that his father first had needed to teach Ricard to rule before Ricard could have been allowed access to their intelligence. Now some education was in order for Ned. Or better, a little history. It was never wrong to know the men behind the myths. But that would have to wait until Ricard and Ned were alone again. Tom, Ricard simply said, please bring us back to our horses. Of course, my lord. Tom raised the anchor again and left the barge to drift back towards their starting location. The man looked relieved to be rid of his burden. Still, in his position the ferryman must have been more aware of the general state the Riverlands than both James Ned and Ricard met, and more than the Tom at Riverrun. Therefore, the ferryman was probably even more interested in credible news from nobility. Well, it always helped to reward one's own men. And Tom's tended to know the true worth of information. Tell me, Tom, do you have family around here? Yes, my lord, I do. My second son just got his first child, you see. I hope he won't see no fighting too soon. He'd probably serve you better as my successor here than swinging a sword at your enemies. Me Henrik is a smart lad, my lord. Ricard had to raise an eyebrow at that. At least, after a second Tom seemed to notice his mistake. The Riverlander seemed flustered for the first time. Sorry, my lord, I did not mean to imply. Tom started with a nervous look towards Ned. My second son Henrik really is becoming a father. I would not dare threaten. Ricard raised a hand, and he let a small smile show on his face. Ned did look a little red as Tom continued to fidget. But it did not do to leave Tom frightened. Or worried for the future. Tom, Ricard said, and the man stilled. I am also looking forward towards my grandchildren. I do hope though your son did wed your good daughter before begetting her with child, right, Tom? And worry not, Tom. Us Starks look after our loyal people. Your son won't see war here. Ricard drummed his fingers shortly on the box of sentinel pine, drawing Tom's eyes from a reddening Ned towards the little chest. As Tom looked up again Ricard continued speaking with a wolfish grin. Welcome to the north, Tom. They hit the shore as Ricard said the words, and Tom looked to be gulping for air for a second. Ricard and Ned quickly disembarked. Cregans get thanks you for your service. Ricard dismissed the Tom before him, for all of import had been said. I thank Cregans get for the fire in my hearth in winter. Tom the ferryman still looked somewhere between relieved and frightened as he answered, and soon after Tom had disappeared behind the next river bend with his barge. As soon as the Cregans man was out of sight, Ned turned to Ricard for answers. Father! What was all that about? That, Ricard said as he leveled his stare onto his son, was a message from my spymaster telling me to hurry home. You will need to know the whole code in time, but we will take it step by step. But for now, walk with me, Ned. I do not have the time right now to indict you into all that comes with being the Lord of Winterfell, Ned. You will learn our codes after your wedding. For now, tell me, who do you think was the worst king the North ever had? Eddard did not think on the question for a longer time. Ricard's heir had become accustomed to the apparent non sequitur questions Ricard asked in their discussions. As Ned fell into a trot keeping pace with Ricard, Ned gave the answer Ricard had expected. After all, Ricard had given his father the same answer once. Brandon the Burner. He burned the northern fleets and shipyards and left our house vulnerable to the Ironborn. He left us without the capability to re-establish our presence at sea. Since Brandon's death the North has not had a navy. It was the obvious answer to Ricard's question. It was also the wrong answer. Brandon the Burner was rarely talked about because he had to make ugly decisions out of necessity. Tywin Lannister would have liked the man. Ricard spoke to set Ned's mistake right. One would think so, right? But sadly, our worst king is known in the North as one of its greatest defender. Brandon the Burner brought peace to the North for nigh on 3 generations after his death and allowed the North to recuperate from the most devastating string of conflicts it had suffered. If Brandon had not burned our coasts, the North would likely have splintered from within and fractured from without. Instead, the worst king to ever rule the North was Theon the Hungry Wolf. Ned snapped around to Ricard so quickly that Ned almost stumbled over his feet in the middle of a step. Ricard did not let it deter him. Theon started out a promising king, fending a Vargas 7-star at the Weeping Water when he was just a young man. In fact, Theon was probably the best tactician the North ever produced. As far as I recall, the Hungry Wolf never lost a battle. Every child in the North had at least heard of Theon Stark, and many a child elsewhere in the world. For all that Ricard knew, the last Andals of Andalos still feared Theon's spectre. It does not matter that Theon won every battle he fought. The Hungry Wolf had grown gluttonous from his successes. After the sundering of Andalos, Theon allied with the mountain clans of the Vale and made plans to strip the kingdom of Mountain and Vale from the Andal invaders. To expedite the war efforts and shorten his supply lines, Theon invaded the Sisters. He had recently returned from Andalos, so Theon employed the same tactics that brought him victory in Essos. However, Theon soon learned that a protracted foreign campaign required better logistics than a mere raid. By the time Theon learned that lesson, the Sistermen were already so embittered with the Starks that they chose to bend the knee to the Arryns and convert to the faith of the Seven, just to get their revenge on the Hungry Wolf. Theon Stark alone is the reason why we lost safety of the Bight, to not even speak of controlling it. But it got worse. With Theon's eyes in the east, the Ironborn started reaving our western coast in greater numbers. Theon did beat them back quickly, true, but right after Theon wheeled around and continued his worthless war. The next invaders to seize their chance when they saw an understaffed frontier were the wildlings, falling over the north in great numbers. Again, Theon pulled off a resounding victory, decimating the wildlings in battle. Only to once more return to fight for the Sisters. It had become an obsession. Theon Stark wanted to cement a legacy like Brandon IX, the last Stark king, to expand the dominion of the North. At the start, the Vale was his goal. But whenever Theon turned to deal with another threat to the North, the Arryns reconquered the Sisters. You know the rebellion in Rills that Theon is famed for quelling. The truth is, the strain that the North's constant state of war caused the economy lead to poverty so great that the small folk in the entire North was on the verge of rebellion. The Rills were just the first place the dam broke. Theon's smartest act during his time as king was beating down that initial rebellion with a brutality never seen before, deterring any other threatening uprisings from starting. The mountains of northern corpses Theon left in that one rebellion dwarfed the dead foes of all his foreign wars combined with a parity of more than 10 to 1. Ricard quieted a second at that. While the Hungry Wolf was feared and hated in the rest of the world, none actually knew the extent of Theon Stark's butchery. It had taken centuries after the reign of Brandon the Burner for the respective Northern information campaign to take root and reverse the image of Theon Stark amongst the small folk. The tale of Theon Stark's life and reign was an interesting subject if one wanted to study what mistakes to avoid ruling the North. But Theon Stark was not what Ricard wanted to talk of, Brandon the Burner was. So, Ricard raised his voice once more. The worthless war simmered down a little after the rebellion of the Rills. However, the thing that Theon did not anticipate was that while the Bight is of vital importance to the north, its coastline in the Vale is sparsely populated and difficult to attack from the water. The Sisters' true significance is that it is the best place to mount an attack on the north from. The White Knife has always been the most important waterway in the north. And from the Sisters, one can command the White Knife's delta and the rest of the Bight. The Arins only recognized this fact, too, after they had been handed sovereignty over the sisters by Theon's stupidity and cruelty. The loss of the sisters to the Vale has been the biggest strategic defeat the North has ever suffered, period. Especially considering that an independent kingdom of the sisters was more beneficial to the North than the Vale. The sistermen themselves were always a nuisance at most, never a threat. With the backing of the entire Vale. That is another problem entirely. Furthermore, Andal expansionism at the time of the Hungry Wolf was still in full swing. The Arins or some other Andal warlord would have tried to conquer the sisters sooner or later. That would have likely brought the sisters into our fold voluntarily. Without local support, the Arins would have never dared clashing with Theon in neutral territory. Considering all that, abandoning the sisters and the worthless war was still better than the alternative. Every Stark king after Theon had to deal with Arin raiders attempting to conquer the North from the sisters. So, for a millennium after Theon died, Stark kings tried to conquer the sisters permanently to put a stop to Vale incursions in the North. The last in that long line of kings was Brandon the Shipwright. His plan had been decently sound. Brandon the Shipwright did build the greatest fleet the North had ever seen, and he kept it out of sight in the Bay of Ice. Brandon's intention was to sail around all of West Eos to attack Gulltown, then use his narrow sea fleet to take the sisters. This time, the plan was to put the entire population of the sisters to the sword. Brandon the Shipwright did not plan conquest, he planned annihilation. Afterwards, the Isles were to be repopulated with Northmen. However, the entire Western fleet was lost to a storm and all of Brandon the Shipwright's plans were for naught. Additionally, the Ironborn, weary of Brandon the Shipwright's navy, had been unable to raid the western coast during his reign. They were the only people to know of the North's western fleet, but then, interaction of any kingdom in West Eos with the Ironborn has always been as little as possible. After Brandon and his fleet were lost, the Ironborn started raiding the western shore to see Dragon Point, the Bay of Ice and the Salt Spear with a vengeance. That was the situation when Brandon the Burner took the Winter Throne. And despite all the external threats he was facing, the Burner noticed that the worst consequence the worthless war had had on the North was an internal one. Small folk numbers were in decline. The people were dying too quickly, and small folk numbers had seen a slight but steady drop for generations. The Northmen had adapted to the state of constant war, but the small folk could not breed fast enough. We do not know at what point the small folk numbers started going down, but the process must have been ongoing for centuries. The truth is, the North can easily support a greater number of people than it does now. Has supported a greater number of people. Furthermore, the populace that lived in the North at the end of the worthless war was less healthy than before, too, as the men to till the fields were off fighting and dying. If that trend were not stopped, the Kingdom of Winter could have faced depopulation and collapse at some point. But the fields had lain fallow too long, and nature reclaimed much of the farmland. The men were needed in the fields. However, even if the Northern Army stopped attacking the sisters, it was unlikely for the Valiman to stop attacking the North from the sisters. So, Brandon devised a way to end the worthless war, and make it as costly for the Arins as possible. Thanks to his father's legacy, the Burner had an abundance of ships on the eastern coast left as well. Old men were crewing the entire navy left for a last attack on the sisters. Instead of soldiers, however, the ships carried pitch and turf and alcohol-soaked linens and barrels of brandy. The Arins sent their own navy in its entirety to meet our forces close off Little Sister. It seemed advantageous to them, I think. Fighting it out in waters under Arin control, close to a harbor under Arin control. The last fleet of the North took down almost all the ships of the Vale with them. A few burning hulls crashed into Sisterton, setting the town ablaze. The Arins never dared publicize their exact casualty count, but the Burner suspected that for every Northman dead, 3 to 4 Valiman left their lives. That is not even considering the cost of the lost ships or the devastation of Sisterton. It took the Arins decades to rebuild. And still, the Sistermen hated the yoke they now live under. Of course, a few leftover ships of the Arins attacked the White Knife. But Brandon only had to set a few docks aflame the first few times and burn the ships as they made land for that folly to cease. After achieving peace in the east, the Burner took the same measures on the western coast. But he took it even further. Brandon the Burner is the reason we do not call the western coast anymore, but the Stony Shore instead. The coast was cleared of people, and when Ironborn came to Reeve, their ships were burned along with entire forests. The pirates in the west learned the same way the Arins did. After, when peace was achieved, Brandon put all the people to work on the fields. Tons of fishermen had been uprooted from their homes, so Brandon put them to task in tilling the fields and making the land yield crops in greater numbers again. And whenever an Andal warlord or a reaving Ironborn party got too cocky again, they were either burned or drawn into the heartlands and killed in the snowfall. Brandon the Burner used fire again to burn any shelter against the weather or supplies he could not carry to deny invading armies purchase in our lands. More than any other king before him, Brandon the Burner understood our house words. Winter is coming is not a warning, it is a threat to our enemies. For us Starks ruled as kings of winter, and winter is not an opponent you can win against. This is the most important lesson you may ever learn, Ned, if it ever comes that you are on the verge of losing a war. Retreat to the north. Burn the supplies you cannot carry. Burn any places that might offer your foes shelter. Let winter kill the enemies you could not kill yourself. Winter will never fail you, Ned, and you will stand triumphant. Ned mulled over the tale of Brandon the Burner in silence for a while. Ricard saw understanding in his son's eyes, but also questions. Good. Ask, son. Why did King Torren go to fight Egon the Conqueror in the Riverlands? Torren heard of the dragons. He was afraid that if fighting took place in the north, a scorched earth retreat would lead to Egon burning keeps. So, he went south to ascertain the truth of the matter. At the time, bending the knee was the right call. Dorne might have kept its independence, but the north could never survive if dragons burned the farmland off the roads where our small folk would have retreated to. However, the groundwork for an independent kingdom of the north was never lost. Many steps were taken the year Torren knelt to support renewed independence should the Targaryens fail us. Losing the new gift was a hard blow to our agricultural output, but we've managed to cope. In turn, it united our lords in purpose behind us, and since then we have been able to prepare for a secession more thoroughly. Aerys was just the last in a long list of insults. This time, Ned did not wait long with the next question. Why tell me the Burner's story now? It relates to a message Tom relayed to us. He has old burns on his hands, and he is asking for help. He has been given shelter, yet I did not dare treat him. Sistermen have the uncommon trait of webbed fingers. Brandon burned the sisters first. That is where our visitor is from. The sisterman is neither a guest nor an uninvited guest, but a visitor. The man is not friend or foe but has a chance to be either. He is new, meaning he came in through White Harbor where the Marndaelis sit in the new castle. He has been given shelter, meaning the sisterman was hidden away somewhere so people do not know he's in the north. He is asking for help, meaning a diplomatically sensitive problem. My spymaster did not dare treat with him. Seeing as the sisters are subject to the Vale and Jon Arryn is our ally, I forbade my spymaster from handling the matter at his discretion. In short, we need to talk to your foster father, Ned. There's trouble brewing in the Bight, enough that the Sunderlands or more likely the Borrells saw Winterfell as a safer alternative than the Eyrie for protection. Let's ride back to our party. Ricard and Ned arrived at the place his horse was bound and quickly mounted it. Ned did likewise, though Ricard could see there were still questions on his son's mind. Ricard was proven wrong in his assumption that Ned was going to ask about the other messages, or the box. Brandon the Burner ruled a long time ago, father. Why have we not rebuilt a fleet since? Who says we haven't? Ricard answered with a smirk as he put the spurs to his horse and broke into gallop back to the camp. Notes. Surprise, I pushed back the phrase another chapter. Kinda. Actually, this was supposed to be the free chapter, but once again, the word count ballooned and I could not stop. But hey, law. Brandon the Burner, best Tsar of HRM. King of Winter. That. Also, a lot of setup for northern consolidation. Phrase are the next step now, I promise. On another note, I've now updated the previous chapters up to chapter 13. In other words, I've rewritten the smut chapter, yay. It's less dreadful now. Yes. That. More importantly, I've rather significantly toned down both Brandon's use as slapstick material in the earlier chapters, literally. And Ashura and Ned are less openly fucking around. Well, the way the story grew, their development did make little sense, from one-dimensional characters used for practical jokes to carriers of the more emotional part of the story. So, one aspect had to go. The cheap laughs, or the so far second most developed plot line of this story. Tough choice, right? In short, the biggest changes are in chapter 8, 11 and 13. Do tell if you like the new chapter, and if you care to backtrack, what you think of the retconned chapters. So long, Ricard and a roll. Chapter 25, Bastards, Women and Dornishmen. Notes. I am back. Long wait and a short chapter, but finally we get to the twins. Now, I have decided to move the chapter title quote to the bottom notes, also retroactively, because they can sometimes be a little too spoiler-y. Aside from that, at the bottom you'll also find out a little of what I have done in the meantime. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Chapter text. And it did not take long until that little milkmaid could milk her own tits. Walder's spit flew in a high arc as he laughed at his own youthful escapade. Well. Escapades. That bastard's mother had gotten Walder's gift not 2 years ago, and already there was a second child on the way. Ricard threw his head back in wild laughter despite the jape's lack of taste, joining in with the cackling lord of the crossing. Old man Walder had taken a shine to the Stark contingent of their party, especially Ricard and Ashura. And while the old man was not antagonistic to Ned, Ned was definitely antagonistic to Walder Free. Which was understandable, but even Ashura managed to fake her smiles at the raunchy jokes that Walder made at her expense. Still, Ricard's future daughter-in-law gave as good as she got. Oh, Ricard had truly laughed at the bit where Ashura had dared any man brave enough to eat more Dornish peppers than she did. While Walder himself had stomached more than his other free contestants Hosteen and Ryman, the Free Patriarch only managed to down 3 peppers in comparison to Ashura's 10. Even though Walder was beaten in that regard by his son Lucian with 4 and his daughter-in-law Betharios with 7 peppers, the whole affair had the whole camp roaring and howling. A dark horse had been Piri and Freehaid, who had eaten second most of the spicy little things at 8.5. The other thing to endear the Starks to the cranky old lord was Ricard's declaration that he wanted the leftovers of the ale from the betrothal feast finished before crossing the Blue Fork and shared the drink liberally with the Freys and Mallisters in their party. Meret Free had even sworn eternal friendship with Ned on one of his drunken binges, and once more Ricard could only marvel at the way his son seemed to attract idiots, lackwits and drunks everywhere. Old gods, Ricard was still wrestling with the revelation that his son Ned and Quayen's Get Victorian were now pen pals. The world had become truly strange. Gossip had flown north, of unrest at the Citadel and another duel between the Red Viper and another Euronwood. The most worrisome rumor, though, came in the guise of a poor man's jape. Queen Rolla has turned most devout. It became ever more urgent that Ricard made a stop at Castle Sawin. Still, it would not do to slight Walder Free in hastening their journey to the north too much, and so Ricard now sat in the place of honor in the Great Hall of the Twins. Tomorrow, the Starks would cross the Green Fork early in the morning. But tonight, they would feast. And, Ricard, how many snows do you have running around up at Winterfell? I mean, you do have to keep warm during your cold winters, eh? Walder's question and lecherous grin had Ricard focusing on the conversation again. The wet nurse that already fed my father still lives at Winterfell, and even now I am too fearful of her spoon to go around knocking up scullery maids, Ricard said, leaving a pregnant pause before he continued, so I keep all the ingredients necessary for moon tea by my bedside. Walder started roaring, and even though Ricard took care that few people could hear his words, the laughter soon rippled through the entire hall. None of the guests wanted to appear anything but jolly while the fossil in the high chair was having a great time. And while Ricard spoke the truth of the matter that he did not have any bastards, he did not keep the habit of sleeping with the help in Winterfell. Doing so not only bred bastards but also discontent. Ricard knew how easy it was to bribe unhappy servants, so he took care there were none at his castle. Of course, that did not mean that Ricard had stayed celibate in the decade since Lyra's death, but bastards born after the birth of any legitimate children could lead to difficulties when procuring a second marriage for Ricard. That was too valuable a tool to endanger even in the slightest. Got any grand bastards, though? I know enough of my children take after me, so there are enough of those filling my halls. And your former heir did have a fitting reputation to question whether Brandon sowed some oats. Well, Ricard drawled the words a little to match his salacious grin. That is definitely a possibility, Walder. Though, I may have to worry for Ned as well. From all I have heard so far, my new heir is the one with the wicked tongue. That remark set loose another avalanche of cackling, and Ricard used that reprieve to ponder Brandon's proclivities once more. The matter of bastards was actually something that Ricard would have to talk with someone about. At least Brandon had not gotten a northern noblewoman with child, of that Ricard was fairly certain. No, if that were the case Robard would have contacted Ricard directly. But if Brandon had children with a woman of the small folk, letters concerning something with that little political relevance would not have been encrypted or brought to Ricard directly. No, if Brandon had left a small folk's note behind somewhere, only an unmarked letter addressed to Ricard would have arrived at Winterfell. And those letters would have passed through Waller's hands, along with any correspondence detailing Brandon's other disgraceful behavior. Yet none such letters had ever made it into Ricard's hands. It seemed Waller's Flowers was due election on obedience. After all, Ricard by now knew there must have been at least a few unmarked letters concerning Brandon's conduct. Talking of bastards, Walder once more got Ricard's attention, talking quietly in between sips of butterwell wine and bites of loose. I have noticed your lovely Dornish daughter-in-law-to-be has not once touched the good wine I shared with you today, Ricard. How does that come about? Ricard did not sit straighter, yet he did let the corners of his mouth drop a little to show displeasure. I believe, my friend Walder, that Lady Ashura is not overly fond of any wine besides Dornish red. And let us not even talk of ale. She will acquire the taste for it in the north, with time, and I see no need to pressure her in that regard. Oh, I did notice that the Lady Ashura never once drank with us as we were finishing your leftover ale, Ricard. Yet, I cannot have a guest leave my halls thinking they had been hosted to anything less than the best of my ability. Let me send for a cask of the best Dornish red in my cellar. Walder was goading Ricard. So, Ricard put his smile back on, yet it was lacking even a trace of warmth this time. Walder. I like you. But not too long ago there was another riverlord that tried to push me on matters that concerned my heir's consort. Ricard gave Walder a hard stare over the rim of his own cup as he drank from the old butterwell wine himself. If Ricard was honest with himself, the white wine was a little too sweet for his taste. As he put the cup down again, it seemed to break a bubble of silence just between the two lords at the place of honor. So, Walder. Won't you remind me just how it came to be that we traveled north from Riverrun together? Walder Free held Ricard's gaze for a total of maybe 3 seconds. Then, the old man faltered. His point made, Ricard decided to throw the old man a line. The wine truly is the perfect companion to go with Luce, Walder. You just have to sell me some so I can have them brought to Winterfell. The old pike was not properly boned, but that did not stop Ricard from eating heartily as he resumed with his fish after saying his piece. Walder just stayed quiet, even when Ricard had finished with his dish. The old man was less jolly for the next 3 courses. After having left Walder alone to stew during the meal, Ricard did reapproach the Lord of the Crossing after dinner had finished. Walder, old friend, Ricard started, joviality back in his voice, let us not part tonight on a bad note. I was not aware there was a bad note between us, Ricard, Walder said, his face pinched as his voice the tone of only bad notes. Old gods, you can be as cranky as they say. Ricard just talked on, knowing no one had ever dared say the same to Walder's face. Let me help you with that. Your second youngest with your Cricket Hall wife, Jimmy, was it? I hear he has been betrothed to a Waynwood chit. The last word drew a crude smile from Walder, the ice broken once more. True. Well, what is the name of his unbetrothed brother again? Raymond, Ricard. Right, that one. Ricard barreled on as Walder seemed stuck between insulted and intrigued. Lord Karstark is always looking to pawn of his cousins on any respectable bachelor. Pays a good dowry, too. Now Walder was definitely intrigued, and best friends with Ricard once more. Stephen had told Ricard that inquiries for Raymond's hand from House Beesbury in the Reach had been made. Ricard had advised the old heir that any connection to the Reach was a fool's investment right now. And to Ricard, any link the Frys had to the fight for the Reach was a liability. Their famed family loyalty was the Freys' greatest asset. The Freys were most valuable to Ricard for that famed loyalty and their myriad family ties with houses in the whole Riverlands. And except Walder's own late wife Bethany Rosby, all of the ties House Free under Walder's rule had made in the Riverlands, the Vale and the Westerlands. The Freys were the house most important for any transition of power in the Riverlands after the war. Therefore, binding the Freys to the north through family was of paramount importance. And Rickard Karstark would be praising Rickard Stark to the old gods for thinning Arnulf Karstark's brood in Karhold. Walder himself once more gifted Rickard his honest, sleazy grin. "Rickard, my friend, let me gift your house 3 barrels of Butterwell vintage for your heir's upcoming nuptials." The two lords continued talking for another hour on the minutiae of a union between Karstark and Free before they split and retired for the night. The Stark host was set to depart from the twins an hour after dawn the next day. They were going to reunite with Jonarin and his men, who had taken the detour along the river road, at entrance to the neck on the King's Road. The old falcon had insisted he be there for Ned's wedding, so Elbereth had been entrusted with ruling the Vale in his absence. Under the guidance of Lady Anya Wainwood, of course. Walder Free was seeing of Rickard in person, the two men having reached a sort of rapport with one another. Later in the day a raven would be sent towards Karhold from the twins. "This is it, you old cunt," Rickard said, and there was a sort of fondness to his voice as he spoke. "Try not to die before your next wife comes to warm your bed." "Hey, I plan to make it to number 10 at least before I croak." Rickard joined Walder as the old man chuckled after his response. "Oh, the tragedy." Fishing a purse from his saddle, Rickard threw the jiggling pouch towards the weaselly old man. Greedily, Walder grasped for the money. "I fear my time as your guest is over, Walder. There is your toll, Lord of the Crossing. A stag for every man in my host, a dragon for every lord." The going rate was usually 2 stags for every man. 3, if the Lord of the Crossing did not like you. In other words, the going rate was 3 stags every man. "Fucking miser," Walder grumbled in response as he sifted through the coins, pulling out the single gold dragon within. "You're even cheating me still. The whoring warrior is a lord. Where is my second dragon?" "I did not know that the Lord of Storm's End was one of my subjects," Rickard replied, almost serene. "In other words, go fleece him yourself." Walder shared an almost impish smile with Rickard, and Rickard was surprised to see that it fit the old man. "That is an old mint," Walder said, turning the profile of Egon the Conqueror to reflect the sun. "Never seen a coin from the first's reign." "Lucky you," was all that Rickard replied as he mounted his horse. "Do send that barrel soon, Walder. See you the next time I come south." "We will not," Rickard thought, contrary to his words, "because you will not live to see spring return, Walder." "See you next time," Rickard Walder replied, oblivious, "and try not to make such a mess of the south again." With those words of parting, Rickard spurred his horse on to take the lead of their group, riding with Ned alone to the forefront. Rickard's son stayed quiet by his side, noticing Rickard's somber mood. Rickard only started talking when they were out of sight of the twins. "Did you know the Mormonts once held sole dominion of the whale trade in the Sunset Sea, Ned? It only stopped after the onset of the Worthless War, when we took their sailors east to fight the Arins. The whaling ships on the western coast just rotted away over the millennium that followed." "Is this a continuation of Brandon the Burner's story, father?" Ned seemed almost eager at the thought. But no, this time Rickard was going to speak of bleaker subjects than war. "It is not. Walder Free will fall into a coma in a few months. He will never wake again." While Rickard did not check Ned's reaction to the dispassionate statement, the question that followed was not unexpected. "What does that have to do with Mormonts and whaling?" "With Mormonts? Nothing. But in 8.000 years us Starks have accumulated dangerous knowledge that even the Citadel is unaware of. And the Maestus never will, because by now the Ebenees control the whale trade in the Shivering Sea and the Ironborn have kept the Sunset Sea free of any West AOC business of the same. Yet we know, Ned. Whalers and miners die the same deaths." "I do not follow, father," Ned said. "There is gold in the northern mountains, Ned, but only small veins of the metal have been found, and northern gold is tainted. Who are the 7 greatest amongst the mountain clans under our rule, Ned? And what are their sigils?" It took a little time until the answer came forth, but it did. "House Val, 3 brown buckets on blue with a grey-white rim. House Flint of the Mountains, a broken grey tower on black with 3 stars above. House Nuri, 6 green thistles on yellow. House Burley, a white knife on a blue triangle on a white shield. House Hartley, the 3 stages of the moon in blue on a white shield. House Liddell, 3 pinecones and fir trees on white. House Knott, bronze fretwork on a white shield. House Hartley's 3 moons are on a white stripe on a blue shield, but otherwise you are correct, Ned Ricard said, or at least you are in theory. You see, House Norrie's sigil is actually 6 thistles on gold. The color is just too expensive to use. And the 6 thistles symbolize the poisonous nature of the Norrie's gold. As our new allies to the west could tell you, normal miners die by the time they reach 40 because of the grueling work they do. Yet Norrie gold miners in the first millennium under Stark rule died by the time they reached 25, and all of the same cause. First, the men complained of abdominal pain. Then they lost weight. Soon after they tended to lose balance at times, or their speech started slurring. Their response to stimuli lapsed entirely and some developed fits. If they did not die due to accidents, all fell into a coma and died within a year of the first pains in their abdomen. Only when they stopped working in the mines right at the onset of that pain did they have a chance to survive. And that chance was often slim. Ricard looked back at Ned as he finished, and the younger man looked stricken. How is it that the Lannister rule over anyone except corpses, then, father? The question was a whisper, but it was not asked timidly. It was not the gold, you see Ned, it was poison silver. It streaks the gold veins in the northern mountains, and it turns viscous at surface temperature. We do not know if other gold veins have the same problems, but there is a reason that northern currency was minted from the silver mines around the White Knife. I guess the Westermen just got lucky. Father, you said whalers and miners die the same deaths. But how is that possible? Where would whalers get into contact with this poisonous silver? We do not know how, Ned, but whalers stuck at sea that do not succumb to scurvy tend to show the same symptoms as miners. Tests by Brandon the Bad have shown that regular consumption of fish hastens the onset of symptoms when one has been poisoned. The older and higher in the food chain the fish is, the stronger the amplification. The Bad thought that all fish are poisonous. However, the amount of poison they carry might be too minuscule to matter. Only predatory fish, like whales, are dangerous to consume in high quantity as they also contain the poison from the fish they themselves have eaten. Brandon the Bad was a touchy subject in the Stark family history. The only Stark king that had ever been fostered with the Boltons, the Bad had shown a penchant for torture and cruelty during his reign. However, he had also kept meticulous notes of the effects of poisons and other instruments he used. It was a grim read. Ned understood Ricard's implication, after a second. The loose. Indeed, Ned. Yesterday I coated a gold dragon in a naturally refined form of poisoned silver, and today Walder collected his toll from me. Oh, the dragon alone was potent enough that he will succumb in time. And yet, every time that Walder eats his favorite fish, he will die just a little quicker. The conversation stalled a little after that. Just as Ricard had known it would. Yet soon after, Ned returned with more questions. Just as Ricard had known he would. Father. There is something I do not understand. Ask me, then, Ned. When we were camped at Riverrun, you had Shura insinuate to the Wents that she would be the one to poison Lord Walder. Why? It served more than one purpose, Ned. Ricard actually wanted to say more, but a harsh laughter from Ned interrupted him. Doesn't it always, father? Ricard stopped his horse. Ned had sounded too bitter to simply let the comment go. Ned actually passed Ricard for a second before quickly pulling his charger to order. Son. Ned seemed stiffen at Ricard's calling. Is there something that displeases you? Ned did not answer immediately. So, Ricard just sat there, astride on his horse, waiting for their host to catch up. The things you are doing, Ned started, and the way you go about doing them, father. They go against everything Jon has taught me growing up. As High Lords, should we not lead by example? What about honor and justice? What you talk about, all that leverage. Honestly, it disgusts me. This required a delicate touch, Ricard knew. The things that Jon had taught Ned were not wrong per se. A code of ethics, as it were, is difficult to fault in any case. Still, at times high notions such as honor, mercy, justice, were not applicable if one did not have the power to enforce one's will on the unrepentant. How Ricard started, spurring his horse onwards again. Would you say we should have dealt with Lord Nayland's second? What's the name of the GIT again? Reynold, Ned replied. Reynold Nayland. Right, Reynold Nayland, Ricard simply replied. Gods, what a fucking cunt. Despite the subject, Ricard could not suppress a smirk, and despite himself, Ned could not suppress one either. What a family of gits. Well, out with it, Ned. What should we have done to see justice served to Reynold Nayland and the poor subject of his affections? The wall. Ned's answer was immediate. The wall and a proper gelding. At least the North was not lost on the boy. Still, the answer lacked. Okay. So, the second son of Lord Nayland is sent to the wall. What does that mean for Lord Nayland's succession? What about his opinion of us? What are the consequences of that opinion changing? Do keep in mind, we are looking to wrest power in the Riverlands from the Tullys. Finally, what happens to the woman that Reynold Nayland mistreated? Progressively, Ned looked less and less sure. It was a beautiful thing, really, noblesse oblige. A beautiful thought. But how to punish someone who deviates from a moral standard when they have the power to prevent lawful prosecution? Let me tell you what would probably have happened if we did it your way, Ned. Reynold Nayland would have been convicted, gelded, and shipped off to the wall. As soon as that happens, House Nayland stands to lose a good amount of reputation. Lord Nayland also loses his spare. All because of us. Of House Stark. So, Lord Nayland will not be happy with us. Luckily for him, we have just recently made a rather important enemy in the Riverlands. Rather publicly as well, I might add. Every house that supports House Tully instead of us is an enemy. Every house that does so because we were wasteful and pissed away leverage to bind them to us instead is a mistake on our part, and incredibly wasteful. We are Northmen. We do not have the luxury to be wasteful when winter comes. Now let us look at all that from a strategic perspective. I do not give a shit who rules Hagsmire and its land. Generally, of course. It is an insignificant village with pretty much no economic relevance. However, just looking at distance, it lies on the shortest route from the north to Riverrun. If we ever are to launch a quick invasion there, we do again not have the luxury to face opposition at every insignificant village we pass. Am I clear so far? Despite Ned's nod of approval, there was defiance in his eyes. Of course, the consequences Ricard laid bare so far did nothing to address Ned's noble concerns regarding the mistreated small folk woman. Now, the last consequence of all that is that the poor woman Reynold Nayland mistreated will either end up dead or in a brothel before the year is out. What? No. Why? Ned sputtered. Fucking sputtered. Ricard could not even suppress a sneer. What did you think would have happened? Cruel as it is, being the favorite plaything of a noble ensures that the woman has not been thrown out of her house yet. She's used goods. Who would want to marry her now that she's been soiled so publicly? Everyone in her village knows. But the same fear that prevents the townsfolk from reporting Reynold Nayland to his father prevents them from harming the woman as well. Ned was not stupid. He understood what Ricard was talking about immediately, even if he did not like it. Still, Ned was not satisfied with Ricard's explanation. How does not interfering improve the situation, then, father? Well, Ricard started, knowing he wore a wolfish smile. I never said we would not interfere, did I? I told the Jane not to interfere until the poor girl is showing. A bastard, Ned, can always be a powerful piece. The poor woman will find shelter in the north once she is pregnant, she will be cared for, and the good Lord Nayland will be informed of the consequences of his son's transgressions. As will his heir. Ricard let that information sink in. A bastard can always be a powerful piece. Be it the father's sentimentality or the wife's jealousy, both could be used as tools. Ricard saw Ned look back towards their party. Towards Robert and little Maya. A worried look, but the right instincts were there. Why both of them, father? Why the Lord and heir both? Ned did not even look back at Ricard as he asked. You love your siblings, Ned, Ricard answered, pulling up beside his son, and while a father loves all his children, many young people in Westeros tend to see their siblings as rivals as well. Not as enemies, but at least as people they need to compete for an inheritance with if their family is not the richest. Like House Nayland. Lord Nayland will recognize the leverage we have against him. His heir, on the other hand, will recognize the leverage we have for him. Now, while we can force good Lord Nayland to fall in line with the leverage we hold and the restraint we have shown by not shipping his son off to the wall, his son, who might one day become your bannerman, is likely to be more positively disposed towards House Stark because we helped him, and because we recognized his relative importance early enough. Lastly, if Lord Nayland possesses a modicum of intelligence, he will find a way to curb young Reynolds' enthusiasm to prevent having to serve two masters. I might send him a pointed letter encouraging to do exactly that if he fails to act in that manner on his own. That, at least, brought a bittersweet smile onto Ned's face. Ricard's next sentence brought Ned out of his reverie. But enough of House Nayland. Let me get back to insinuating Ashura before Lady Went. The most important thing Ashura ever told Shella Went was that she's good friends with the Martells, especially including Oberyn Martell, a known user of poison. As long as people have an obvious answer to the origins of poisons we might come to employ in the future, they will not suspect more obscure possibilities. Hence, we are more open to use more efficient ways of conducting warfare more openly in the future. And here is the most important part. As men, we are frowned upon when using poison. As you said, it is dishonorable. For women, it is par of the course. And amongst women, it is even a matter of building prestige. I have just helped good Ashura with establishing a reputation amongst certain circles in the south that may prove useful in the future. I have warded off suspicion from one of our most closely kept secrets. I have taken out a likely obstacle for our march south while binding an ally, and I did not even need to break guest right to do all that at the price of a single dragon. Now, do you still think it is more noble to kill 10,000 men in battle rather than one awful old man with poison? Because the only thing I see in that line of thinking is an undue amount of waste. Ned was not convinced by Ricard's words. Ned did not like Ricard's words. But Ned obeyed Ricard's words, and that was enough for the old wolf. In time, his son would come around. The war would see to that, he knew. For Ricard, that concluded the matter of Walder Free. Regardless, they had more important things to discuss than the long overdue death of an old fossil. As you have bidden, the cavalry will greet you at the gate in force. You were right, the fillies have shown themselves temperamental. It was a whisper, yet Ricard had Ned's attention in less than a second. At Moat Cailin we will find Lord Ryswell along with his sons and daughters, and the houses bound to House Ryswell by marriage or betrothal, represented by Lord Roose Bolton and Willem Dustin. That entire coalition is a loaded crossbow we need to disarm or make use of. Now, how do we solve the mess Brandon left us, Ned? Remember my orders, Ned. Remember the words. Ricard was prepared to give his son time, or the answer straight out if Ned took too long. Yet, Ned did not disappoint. Give them shelter. The father will ride with me from the gate. You have a bastard hidden away somewhere, either Willem's or Roose Bolton's, and you are looking to strike at their alliance through Lord Ryswell's daughters, the fillies. Who have you gotten by the balls? Ricard knew he looked a predator, and he could swear Ned looked just a bit wolfish then, too. On my way south, I had gotten news that a miller's wife had asked for shelter, bringing her son with her. I was only able to send news to my spymaster after that sorry business in the capital. Gods know what the woman would have done if she had not heard from me, but now we have custody of one Ramsay Snow, bastard of Roose Bolton, conceived through rape when he illegally claimed the right to the first night from a miller and subsequently killed him. A bastard, Ned, can always be a powerful piece. Bonus. Vic and Ned are now pen pals. To commemorate that giant leap forward in their relationship, here you go with another instance of Vic's Dairy Diary. Hello Dairy Diary. Today I got my first letter from my friend Ned. I am so happy that I asked him to be my people pen pal at Riverrun. This is the first letter I have gotten that is not from Roderick. Roderick the reader, of course, not Balon's son. Balon's son Roderick is stupid. I doubt Roderick knows how to read. Balon's son, of course, not Roderick the reader. It would be stupid if Roderick the reader could not read. Stupid like Balon's son Roderick. Wait, that is all too confustific hard. Again, Roderick the son of Balon cannot read. I think. Roderick, the son of. Okay, I do not remember who the father of Roderick the Reader is. Point binge being, Roderick the Reader can read. How but, the letters I get from Roderick, the Reader, are confusey diwick hard. Ned's letter is better. I mean, I asked a question to both Ned and Roderick, the Reader. And Ned's answer was better. As was Ned's letter. Better. Okay, the question. It was very important to me. Thing is, father finally gave me command of my own ship. I am now officially a captain. But, my boat had no name. That is, the boat had a name, but it was a bad name. Like, Kraken. Every second boat at Pike is named Kraken. So, it's a bad name. Anyways, I am bad with names, so I asked Ned and Roderick, the Reader, to help me think of a good name. Because, Ned and Roderick, the Reader, are both good with names. And thoughts. So, my question was for both of Ned and Roderick, the Reader, to think of an embossing imposing name for my ship. I wanted the name to show I am a hard fuck. A hard fucker. I wanted the name to show I am a hard fucker. Something masked you're in mast culling manly. And then, Roderick, the Reader, shudges at why says I should call my boat phallic wave piercer. What the fuck is phallic? Sounds feminine womanly. Bitchy. A bitchy sounding word like phallic just is not manly. So, I am not calling my boat phallic anything. Because phallic is girly. But Ned gets me. Ned is a true friend, he can think of a name that shows I am a hard fuck. A hard fucker. And he did. Think of a name that shows I am a hard fucker. Ned did. Because Ned is good with names. And thoughts. Anyways, the name has everything. It has a word that is watery, and I am a captain now, so, water. It has got a fuckery word, that shows I am a hard fucker. Wait, is fuckery a word? It now is. And it is a coarse cuss word. Perfection. So, since toady today I am the captain of the sunken cunt. Now that's hard fuckery. Because fuckery is a word. Yeah. Goodbye diary. Vic. The end.